every time students ask us that how do we integrate specifically your history topics along with your current affairs dimension. So Maratha military landscapes have been given recognition in the cultural criteria. So the most important aspect or significance of Maratha military structures was that the kind of defense system they made or created, they used the natural terrain along with their man-made structures. There is a specific mention of role of personalities or contributors or contributions from different parts of the country. The most important notable personalities are Kanhoji Angre is very significant. So this is how these forts are jointly managed by central and state governments together. These are the watchtowers which are known as Burj. So the kind of cap some Maratha soldiers wore were made up of the wool of sheep and goat. So hello everyone. We welcome you all in this series of, taking up monthly current affairs topics or a very relevant topic which can be taken up from the perspective of history, right? So this time we have chosen this topic which is known as Maratha Military Landscapes. So recently, these forts, group of 12 forts, have been given UNESCO's World Heritage Site recognition. And it is a very important topic from both prelims and mains point of view. So before starting with the topic, let's have an overview of how we need to take this topic. Now, this is a very important, question, relevant question, which, every time students ask us that how do we integrate specifically your history topics along with your, current affairs dimension. So here I want to tell you all that, there is a way to integrate your current affairs and static dimension, right? So how to go about it? Let us understand and take this topic with, the static dimensions. So before we start with any, current affairs topic in history, it is very important that we understand the static dimensions. So if we are taking up Maratha military landscape, we need to understand how we need to go about it. So obviously, the first aspect in any current affairs topic is why it has come in news, right? So we all know that the Maratha military landscape have been given UNESCO's recognition in the World Heritage Site list. It has become the 44th site of India to be inscribed in the final list of UNESCO's World Heritage Site list all over the world, right? Specifically from India, right? The next aspect, why do you think that, UNESCO might have included it in the UNESCO's World Heritage Site list? So for that, it is very important that we are understanding the significance of Maratha military landscape. So when we understand for what all reasons, what is the importance of Maratha military landscape for, which UNESCO has given it a recognition in the World Heritage Site list, we have to break this down by understanding the criteria on the basis of which it has been inscribed as a World Heritage Site, right? So this site has been given inscription in the cultural site category. So there are three categories of sites which are recognized by UNESCO. One is natural, the other one is cultural, and the third one is mixed, right? So Maratha military landscapes have been given recognition in the cultural criteria. So why have they been given recognition in the cultural criteria? Because of the kind of Maratha architecture, the forts display, the kind of geographical landscape and the structures built by Marathas, and the cultural values transmission that Maratha fort military architecture exhibit. Throughout the generations, till today, we are upholding the cultural values, specifically Hindavi Swaraj, through these Maratha military forts, right? The next aspect, what you need to all have in this Maratha military landscape topic, are the static dimensions and how they integrate with now current affairs dimensions. So not all forts have been given World Heritage Site list recognition by UNESCO. There are only 12 forts which have been given this recognition. So for that, we need to understand the nature and type of Maratha forts in general, right? What all kinds of forts did Marathas build? Next aspect is your Maratha administration. So from here also, you can expect questions. So for example, you need to know about the general administration of Marathas. You need to know about the military administration of Marathas. You need to know about the fort administration of Marathas, and also as part of, Maratha military structures, Navy, role of Navy is also very, very important. So Navy administration is equally important when you are doing your Maratha military administration, right? So this is what is the static dimensions. And obviously, when we are doing Maratha military structures, how can we not pay emphasis on Maratha artillery? So whatever arms and ammunitions, weapons, specifically the kind of indigenous, innovations that were done by Marathas, they become very important aspect for us to know, right? So these are the, very important static dimensions which are blended in this topic. Now, if you all have gone through the syllabus of modern Indian history, there is a specific mention of role of personalities or contributors or contributions from different parts of the country, right? So when we are doing any topic in history, specifically, where the structures or contribution could be noted down. So in that aspect, the personalities also have to be identified. And obviously, when we are doing Maratha military landscape, how can we ignore the role of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj? So when we are doing this topic, you need to specifically also prepare the role of personalities or kings in the Maratha military structure. So here's the most important notable personalities are Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And when it comes to naval contribution, the role of Kanhoji Angre is very significant. So this is the whole overview of a current affairs topic from history perspective, right? So I feel that this is what you all should do and try to make sense whenever any topic in history comes in current affairs. So this is what you have to find out in a topic like this. So in today's class, we are, very briefly talking about all these aspects, and specifically we will highlight the indigenous innovations or, the significant contribution done by Marathas in Maratha military, right? So let's start with the topic. So the first thing, obviously, which we have highlighted as part of topic and discussion is, why have they been given the UNESCO's World Heritage Site recognition? To understand that, it is very, very important first that we are looking into the dimensions or facts which might come in prelims, right? And what are they? So whenever UNESCO has given inscription in the final list to any site, we need to know specifically that in which session of the World Heritage Committee was the decision taken, right? So when we talk about the inscription of Maratha Military Landscape as a 44th site in India to be recognized as a World Heritage Site, this was given in the 47th session of the World Heritage Committee in Paris. And they have acknowledged the contribution done by the Marathas in making these Maratha military structures on the basis of military innovation they had undertaken, the kind of ecological adaptation these structures have displayed, which provides an excellent example of how the natural and man-made structures can go together to provide a very strong defense, right? And obviously, the architectural excellence which the Maratha kings or empire had shown in making these structures, also particularly the role of Chhatrapati Shivaji in his, transmission and upholding of values of Swaraj, which have, transmitted till today. The kind of Maratha pride the people take there is a exemplary example of how the values of Maratha, military administration and Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj still stays today in their heart, right? So when it comes to all these aspects of prelims, it is equally important that we know that how and what happens when any such site becomes part of UNESCO's World Heritage Site. So what happens in India? How are they managed? How are they protected? So there are 12 forts which have been recognized as World Heritage Site, right? So in India, there are out of 12 forts, 8 forts that are jointly managed or protected specifically by the Archaeological Survey of India. And which are those forts? Shivneri Hill Fort, Raigad Hill Fort, Lohagad Hill Fort, Jinji Hill Fort, Panhala Plateau Hill Fort, Vijaydur Coastal Fort, Suvarndurg Island Fort, Sindhudurg Island Fort. So these, 8 forts are coming directly under Archaeological Survey of India, which is managing them under national laws like Ancient and Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958 and the Antiquities and Art Treasures Act 1972. So the conservation, protection, management is overlooked by Archaeological Survey of India. So these are centrally protected and managed. When it comes to the remaining 4 forts, they are managed and protected by the Maharashtra government, right? So the remaining 4 forts are protected under the Maharashtra Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1960 and are managed by Department of Archaeology and Museums. And which are those 4 forts? Salher Hill Fort, Rajgarh Hill Fort, Khanderi Island Fort and Pratapgarh Hill Forest Fort, right? So this is how these forts are jointly managed by central and state governments together, right? Now, what about the other forts? So these 12 forts have been inscribed in the UNESCO's World Heritage Site list, but there are other type of forts which you could see in the Maratha military structures, right? So what are those types? So there are certain forts that were built by Marathas which were known as land forts. In their language, in Marathi language, they were known as Bhuikot. For example, Bahadurgarh, Solapur Fort, Ahmednagar Fort, they were all very good examples of land fort. Then there were forest forts also, which were constructed in the, dense forests, right? And they were known as Vandurg. For example, Javali Fort. Then there were human forts also, which were constructed specifically for, taking refuge or some kind of rest. They looked like fort, so they were known as Nardurg. The Maratha military landscape, which have been inscribed in the UNESCO's World Heritage Site, they are basically the hill forts and the coastal forts or island fort. And the other remaining type of forts which you could see in the Maratha military landscape could be your Bhuikot, your Nardurg, your Vandurg, etc. So these are the different kinds of forts which we see as part of Maratha military structures, right? Now coming to understand what is the significance of Maratha military landscape. This is a very important critical aspect to be understood because this gives us the reason why they have been inscribed in the UNESCO's World Heritage Site as a final category in the cultural criteria. So the most important aspect or significance of Maratha military structures was that the kind of defense system they made or created, they used the natural terrain along with their man-made structures. So this is what was developed around three axes: the Sahyadri mountains, the Konkan coast, and the Deccan peninsula. So along these three axes, these Maratha military structures were made. The Maratha military landscape did not restrict to only the state of Maharashtra. We could also see a fort that was constructed in Tamil Nadu, which was known as Jinji Fort. So this gives us an example that how Marathas, through their defense planning strategy, through their knowledge about how to use geographical terrain of different kinds and the governance strategies, could give them the edge and make them the most important challenging power of those times, right? Not only this, the Maratha or Maharashtra, terrain, the geographical landscape was also, of different kinds that was used by Marathas. So it not only included the coastal outposts, but also the plateaus, the hills, the lakes, which were used by the Marathas in building those structures, right? So together, they formed a very cohesive, comprehensive military landscape that highlighted the innovation which the Marathas used and included in them, which again made them a very powerful defensive structures, right? Apart from this, we also need to understand that these military structures were not to be seen only in terms of how they were made, but also why they were made. So they were made to uphold the values of Swarajya, which was a very important aspect which Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj highlighted through his Hindavi Swaraj, which we will be understanding in a short while. So these values of Swarajya, self-rule, have transmitted since generations till date, right? So these are the aspects which we need to know why any site, a site like this, has been included as in the list of World Heritage Site list, right? Apart from this, when we are understanding at a micro level how Maratha military landscapes were formed, we need to understand the architectural features of it as well as the innovations, the defensive innovations which were used by Marathas in these structures, right? So Maratha military structures were not only to be seen from the perspective of how they were built, but they were self-sufficient towns in itself. So whatever the forts were constructed, they were fully self-sufficient, keeping in mind what if there are prolonged wars and battles, what if the supplies get reduced. So they were almost self-sufficient, and to have that kind of essential structures or facilities in the fort was again very well thought of, keeping in mind the times of Marathas, right? So this is also a very important aspect. Now, how these Maratha forts were constructed? So these Maratha forts were having very strong walls, fortifications done around them, right? Not only that, they used very indigenous materials like basalt stone, lime plaster, teak wood that were predominantly used to make these structures. Not only this, in order to provide a very strong defense that, it is getting very difficult for the enemy to reach there, apart from the main fort, there were buffer forts also constructed. So, for example, Lohagad fort, to reach Lohagad fort, one had to cross 10 buffer forts. Similarly, one had to reach Raigarh and Rajgarh forts, they have to collectively cross 8 buffer forts. So, there was this concept of buffer forts also in place in making Maratha military structures, right? As I told you, that Maratha military forts were not only forts, they were very self-sufficient. They were having the essential infrastructure within the complex of the fort. And what were they? So, for example, barracks for housing the troops were part of the forts. Obviously, the troops had to be stationed, the troops had to stay somewhere. So, those barracks played a very important role. Similarly, there was a Darukhana, which was a place constructed to store arms and ammunitions. There was this granary to store food, which was known as Ambar Khana. Then there was a dedicated storage for other essential supplies like oil and ghee, right? There was also a very dedicated effort, given by Marathas to ensure that even the water supplies are not cut, right? For that, they had made different kinds of water, tanks, cisterns, lakes in the complex of the forts itself, right? So if you could see these pictures, you would understand that how forts were constructed. So for example, if you could see the fort design, they are having curved walls. This is a very interesting fact to note. Why they were having curved walls? First, because of the terrain. Second, these curved walls ensured that the enemy is not able to see the people or person in the fort. So what if the enemy is, you know, uh, coming from here and the Marathi soldier is stationed here, so he won't be able to see that someone is here, right? So that is a very important strategic design that they, made in the forts, right? Plus, there were many concentric walls that were made. What do you understand by concentric walls? So there were layers of walls surrounding the forts, right? And in these layers of walls, you had some watchtowers also, where the soldiers could target the enemies outside, right? So this is known as percote system. The arrangement of making concentric walls surrounding the fort. Another aspect were the watchtowers like these. These are the watchtowers which are known as burj or bastions. They were also very significant aspect in the Maratha military structures, right? If you could see the layout of the land fort, you will understand that these are the watchtowers, right? There were also fort walls built, Tatbandi, to provide a defense. Then there were different kinds of gates also, laid down in the Maratha forts. So, for example, there was this wicket gate, Dindi Darwaza, which could only let one person go inside, right? And then there was this Maha Darwaza, which was also having spikes, in them to again provide a defense for the enemies, right? So this is how, different aspects of Maratha military forts we could see, and we should acknowledge and appreciate the kind of defensive innovations they, thought at that point of time, right? So yes, there was this parcourt system of a way of having multiple concentric walls. There were bastions or buruj that acted as watchtowers. As I told you, there were different kinds of darwazas, right? There was this, darwaza or a, gate that could only let one person go. Then there was Maha Darwaza, which was having spikes. Then there were chores also, secret tunnels or passages, right? Which again, enabled the Marathas to give a very tough fight to the enemies, right? Apart from that, there were, as part of essential, infrastructure and utilities, there was again a very conscious effort being done to lay down the system of water management and conservation. So there were underground water tanks built, there were reservoirs built, there were cisterns, artificial lakes constructed inside the fort complex. So for example, this is how the walls were constructed in the rock cut water system. This is part of Sinhagad fort, right? This is how the Dev Take looks like. Again, a kind of lake, right? This is the lake that was built in Raigad Fort. So there was also, again, it's very, very interesting that the Marathas understood that they needed to have that kind of very specialized knowledge, a person having a specialized knowledge of, geography. So there was this person, or experts known as Panades. So they were invited to guide the, architects of the forts. And who were Panadesis? Panadesis were those who were, having knowledge on how to take out water from the rocks, right? So the spring formation was very important aspect in Maratha military structure. So these Panadesis are again very, very important. So for example, Chandra Tale or Chandra, lake in Rajgarh Fort has one such spring. So this term also becomes very, very important, right? So this is what is Ganga Sagar Talab in Raigarh Fort. This has been constructed using the knowledge of Panadesis, right? So there were rock cut systems, tanke, there were tanks, there were catchment areas, there were filtration systems or knowledge of, having filtered water also, at that point of time used by Marathas. There were channels and pipes for the distribution of waters or supplied in all corners of the fort. So all these systems became very, very important aspect of Maratha military landscape, right? So with this, we have understood that how was, Maratha military architecture, what were the essential public infrastructure or the utilities we could see in the fort. Now coming to another critical aspect, where were these forts located usually, how they were, located, and what is the landscape of these forts, and very important information, if any fact, any battle has taken place. So from that respect also, the information on these forts become very, very important, right? So as you can see, when we see the distribution of these 12 forts, so all the 11 forts are in the state of Maharashtra except one fort in Tamil Nadu known as Jinji Fort, right? If you talk about the geographical landscape, so the forts are concentrated on the Konkan Coast, the Sahyadri range, as well as the eastern coast, because one fort is in the state of Tamil Nadu, right? Now coming to know very briefly about different kinds of hill forts and coastal and island fort. So these are the examples of the Maratha hill forts which have been included in the UNESCO's World Heritage Site list, right? So let's take up the first fort, that is Shivneri Fort. Shivneri Fort is very, very important. Reason being that here Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was born, right? So it is considered to be the birthplace for the, Maratha Chhatrapati Maharaj Shivaji Maharaj, right? So this fort is located in Pune district, and since ancient times, this fort has been under different rulers. So it was built during the time of Satvahans, and then it came under the control of Marathas, right? So as I told you, it is a fort where Shivaji Maharaj was born. So Jijabai, who was the mother of Shivaji Maharaj, spent her days when she was carrying Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Inside this fort, there is a temple dedicated to goddess Shivai Devi. And because of this goddess, on goddess name, Chhatrapati Shivaji was named. So this temple is also important, right? Now, this Shivneri fort is a triangular shaped hill fort and has a very, powerful defense. It has, again, those percotes or concentric walls of having 7 defense system around this fort, right? Next is your Raigad fort. Now, Raigad fort was the fort where Chhatrapati Shivaji was coronated. So this is again very, very important, right? And this also has a grand statue of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, right? So in 1653, Raigad was also known as Reri. It was captured by the Marathas from the Moors, right? And in order to make it worthy as a Maratha capital, Shivaji Maharaj, took the help of Hiroji Indulkar to reconstruct it, right? So this fact is also very, very important. Not only this, Shivaji Maharaj chose Raigad Fort as, the chief, how do I put it, if I may say so, that here the formal proclamation of Hindavi Swaraj was undertaken by Shivaji Maharaj, right? So Raigarh was chosen as a main base or hub to finally proclaim what is Hindavi Swaraj for the Marathas and specifically the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, right? Not only this, Raigarh Fort is also known as King of Forts, Durgraj, right? Now, what is this Hindavi Swaraj? So, Hindavi Swaraj is coming from the word Hindavi plus Swarajya. So, that means it is a concept that lays emphasis on self rule by the Indian people themselves. Now, this self rule did not restrict only to territorial expansion, but also in order to have more indigenous governance, autonomy, protection of dharma, as well as freedom from foreign domination is what it emphasized upon, right? So basically, Hindavi Swaraj is based on the concept of rule by the Indians, not only politically, but ideologically as well, culturally as well, administratively as well, right? So the kind of righteousness, the rule, the dharma that was the vision of Shivaji Maharaj is what is Hindavi Swaraj. Not only this, that, what kind of rule should be established, but it also laid down how the ruler should be. So, in this concept of Hindavi Swaraj, king is considered as a servant of the people. In Marathi, it's known as Raja Karya Karni Janate. So, king exists for the welfare of the people. Not only this, Hindavi Swaraj is also giving us an example of how there should be a Swarajya or a rule against feudal oppression. What is the significance of this concept is that it not only lays down how the king should be, but it also lays down that the kings should not rule only for personal glory. The welfareism that is an essential part of Hindavi Swaraj also upholds that the king should not work for personal glory but only for the janhit or the welfare of the people. Apart from this, there is also highlight of the emphasis being laid down by Shivaji Maharaj in providing more inclusive leadership. How he could have provided more inclusive leadership? By making appointments on the basis of merit and not only on the basis of caste and religion. So this is also a very significant aspect of Hindavi Swaraj. Apart from this, Shivaji Maharaj knew that, it's not only because of the understanding of geography and landscape that in order to protect and uphold the sovereignty of Maratha Empire, not only protection from the land is required, but also from the coasts. So the emphasis being given on the role of Navy and the strength the Navy should have, again, is a very important aspect in the concept of Hindavi Swaraj. That not only battles would be fought for territorial conquest, but also to uphold Indian sovereignty. So this was with respect to what you should know about Hindavi Swaraj. Now coming to Rajgarh Fort. Now this Rajgarh Fort was built on a hill called Murumba Devi Dongar, right? Now this fort is also having many important structures. For example, there is this Mahadarwaza, there is this Jagdishwar temple, which is also very, very important. Then Lohagad Fort. Lohagad Fort is in Pune. Now, this fort was captured by Shivaji Maharaj and he was forced to surrender to Mughals as part of Treaty of Purandar that was there in 1665 AD, right? And Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj again recaptured this fort from the Mughals and used it for Maratha treasury. So the treasury of Marathas under Shivaji Maharaj was, placed here. So this is a very important fact, right? Now comes Salher Fort. Now Salher Fort is in Nasik district. Here the most important Battle of Salher between Marathas and Mughals happened in 1672, where Marathas won. And Marathas were led by Suryaji Rao Kakade. Again, a very important personality, right? Jinji Fort, as you can see the image also, it's very difficult to reach there, right? So Jinji Fort in different times of history, in different periods of time, was known by different names. And what are those names? So Jinji Fort is also known as Senji Fort, Chenji Fort, Chanchi, Jinji in Tamil Nadu. It's considered to be the Great Wall of South India. It's also known as Troy of the East, right? When it was under Bijapuri Sultanate, it was known as Badshabad. It was called as Chindi or Chandri when it was under Marathas. The Mughals renamed it as Nusratgarh. English and French called it as Jinji. So there are different names, of Jinji Fort whenever they were under different dynasties, right? Now, the most important structure in the Jinji Fort is this 7-storied Kalyan Mahal, which is a temple so it is a marriage hall, as well as there is this temple dedicated to a presiding goddess called Chenji Ma'am, right? So this is also very, very important. Along with this Jinji Fort is constructed on the 3 hills. What are those 3 hills? Krishnagiri, Rajgiri and Anandgiri to the west and Chaklidurg to the southeast, right? So Jinji Fort is also very, very important. Now coming to Pratapgarh Fort. Pratapgarh Fort is in Satara district near Mahabaleshwar. It was built in 1556. A very important event happened here when Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj killed the Bijapuri Sultanate general Afzal Khan in the Battle of Pratapgarh in 1659, right? So this event is very important. And why it is important? Because the kind of weapon that was used by Shivaji Maharaj was very innovative. And it was known as Vagnak. We will be doing the weapon separately and I'll be showing you how the Vagnak look like. So this Battle of Pratapgarh and Pratapgarh Fort is very important. Reason being, Shivaji Maharaj killed Afzal Khan here, right? Then comes your Panhala Plateau Fort. It is a hill plateau fort, right? It's also called as Fort of Snakes. Why it is known as Fort of Snakes? Because of the shape of the, or the layout of the fort. Looks like a serpent, right? So here, Battle of Pavankhand happened. Again, it was fought by Marathas and Bijapuri Sultanate. So after Afzal Khan was killed, again a battle happened, right? Here, the Queen Regent Tarabai also spent some years. So Panhala, Plateau Fort, Hill Fort is also very important. Here, Wagh Darwaza is also there, right? Then comes your Vijayadurg. Vijayadurg is your coastal fort, island fort. So it comes from the two words Vijay and Durg. Vijay means victory and Durg means fort. It is also earlier known as Gheriye Fort, and is big. Why it was known as Gheriye Fort? Because it was situated near a village called Gheriye. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj captured this fort from Adil Shah of Bijapur in 1653 when he renamed it as Vijayadurg, right? Why Vijayadurg? Because he, you know, found victory, or he was victorious when he captured it from the Bijapuri Sultanate, right? Next comes your Suvarndurg Fort. Suvarndurg Fort is also near the coast and the island. Now here, this fort is located between Mumbai and Goa on a small island in the Arabian Sea. It was built by Adil Shah for defense purposes. A very important fact or interesting fact which you should note down is that this fort had a shipbuilding facility, right? So this fort is very, very important, Suvarndurg, because it had a shipbuilding facility. And also the basic objective to construct this fort was to counter the enemy attacks, mainly by the European Navy as well as the local chiefs. Now comes your Sindhudurg coastal fort. Now Sindhudurg was also located in the Arabian Sea. Next, it was ordered by Shivaji Maharaj to be constructed between 1664 and 1667. Again, he commissioned Hiroji Indulkar to construct this fort. Now, why did he commission to set up or construct a fort here? The main objective to set up this fort or construct this fort by Shivaji Maharaj was that he was finding it very challenging, and he was concerned with the rising influence of English, Dutch, and Portuguese merchants, specifically on the coast, as well as from the Konkan Coast. They were having severe challenge from the rise of Siddhis of Janjira. So in order to have that defensive check, this fort was constructed. So it was built on a small island known as Kurte Island. So who are these Siddhis, and what is this, challenge which Shivaji Maharaj or Marathas faced? We will be knowing it in a few while. Then comes your Khanderi Fort. Khanderi Fort is also known as Kanoji Angre Island Fort. It's located near south of Mumbai. It was built during again the reign of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, specifically to check the rising menace of Siddhis of Janjira. And they had constructed a fort known as Muru Janjira Fort. So to, have that kind of defense, this fort became very, very important. So now let's understand who are these Siddhis of Janjira and what was their fort Muru Janjira all about. Now these Siddhis came from North Africa and they were followers of Islam, right? They are well known for their sea naval tactics. They were very important sea fighters, which also posed a great challenge to the Maratha Navy, right? And they had constructed Muru Janjira Fort on the Konkan Coast. So the origins of Muru Janjira Fort could be traced back from 15th century onwards, when local fishermen community built a fort made up of wood in order to protect themselves. Later, there was this Abyssinian regent of Ahmednagar Sultanate, Malik Ambar, who constructed it and replaced the wood by stone. right? So Malik Ambar replaced the wooden structure by using stone in 1567 AD and fortified it. And this Murujanjira fort was captured by the Siddhis, and they became very, very important challenge to, the Maratha navy at that point of time, right? Also, the fort was so strategically located that it became very important for even the Europeans to have control over these forts. Why? Because it connected Bharuch, Daman, Diu, and Mangalore, which was a very important route or hub for commerce and military operations. So the location of Murujanjira fort was so strategic that, having control over there was very important, right? Now let's understand about Maratha administration. After what we have understood about Maratha military structures and the kind of forts and defense that was used by the Marathas, let's understand that this Maratha military landscape or the structures would not have been made till the time the Marathas did not have a strong administration. So, how was Maratha administration done? What were the important officers called? How the Maratha administration, was divided is what we will understand. Not only the general administration, but how military administration, naval administration, fort administration undertook is what again our reference point would be. So let's understand how Maratha administration was carried down. The most important central linchpin of Maratha administration was Chhatrapati. So Chhatrapati was a title given to the king. The next position was Peshwa. So Peshwa acted as the prime minister of the Maratha administration. So you could, link it with today's context that Chhatrapati or the king was a nominal head and the executive head was Peshwa, right? When it was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's reign, Chhatrapati or the king power was very important. Down the years, the role of Peshwa increased in Maratha politics and administration. So there was this elaborate administrative arrangement laid down by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, and that was called as Ashtapradhan. So Ashtapradhan was kind of an 8 ministers or 8 officers in the council of ministers who used to assist the Chhatrapati, right? This administration further has to be seen from the perspective of how the divisions were made in Maratha administration, right? So Prant were the provinces and they were managed by a Subedar or a Deshadikari or Mamlatdar, right? The Prants or the provinces were further subdivided into Tarafs, which were managed by Havaldar, also known as Karkun, also known as Paripatyagar. These Tarafs were further subdivided into Mozas, that was the lowest level of administration, Maratha administration, village level administration that was looked after by Deshpandes or Patels, right? The village headman used to run the affairs of the village with the help of village panchayat. So there are 3 important key terms of the offices, which is very important. One is Patil or Deshpande. They were the ones who looked after the lowest level, that is the village level. Then Kulkarnis, who managed the village accounts, and Kotwal, who looked after the policing and municipality functions of the towns. So these are very, very important officers at the Moza or the lowest or the village level. So this is how the administration looked like. As I already told you that there was this 8 council of ministers, Ashtapradhan, which had the officers manning different departments or subjects. So for example, Peshwa was the prime minister or the head of the council, and he managed the civil affairs and he also acted as the king's deputy. Another important from military perspective is the office of Senapati, or also known as Sari Nobat. Very, very important. He was the Commander-in-Chief of Maratha Army and Navy. He was the supreme head of the military who oversaw strategy, training, and defense. Right? So now let's understand how the Maratha military administration looked like. So Maratha military administration had 6 divisions. Infantry. What is infantry? Infantry are your foot soldiers. Cavalry, who were soldiers having animals, right? There were camel battalions in Maratha army. There was elephant battalion in the Maratha army. Also, when we are doing Maratha military, we need to also understand the navy. So these are the 6 main divisions in the Maratha military administration. Now, what are the general features of Maratha military? How they were administered? What was so, powerful in them that they provided a very formidable and strong challenge to not only Indians but also Europeans. So, specifically, Maharaj Shivaji Maharaj introduced several reforms in the Maratha military administration, how the army should be maintained, how military administration should be done. And the first step which he took was to have a permanent standing army, without which obviously it could not, Maratha, could not have become an empire and an important challenging power. Second, he gave salaries in cash rather than jagirs. He also ensured that the recruitment in the army is done on the basis of merit, as well as there were certain officers who were, recruited to have that kind of consciousness, Maratha consciousness and loyalty as well. Next, a strict discipline was enforced in the Maratha military. And how it would have been enforced? By also punishing the soldiers or the army contingents if they are doing looting, plundering, harming civilians, or taking wives in the battle, or taking wives to the battlefield. So there was this strict code of conduct also laid down by the Maratha administration, military administration on the Maratha military, right? Not only this, a very important aspect or a defense technique that the Marathas are well known was, in the area of guerrilla warfare. So they were the ones who were highly trained in guerrilla tactics. And how they could have been trained? Because they were having the perfect environment and landscape to ensure that they could be trained in the guerrilla tactics. So the hide and seek they were trained in, the kind of usage of natural, terrain they could do, right? They became very famous for that, right? And this guerrilla tactic or warfare was also known as Ganami Kava. This is a term used for guerrilla tactics, right? So this hit and run tactics using mountain for their, defense is what you need to, give acknowledgement to the Maratha soldiers and army. Next, obviously, the Maratha military administration could not be completed without building the forts. So forts provided a very powerful defense to the Maratha military. So not only did they repair the old forts, but they also built the new ones, right? Also, the welfare aspect, which was upheld by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, was also seen when it comes to, taking care of the families that were left after the death of the soldiers. So the families of the soldiers who died in service or battlefields were also looked after in Maratha military. Not only this, the Maratha military also recruited Muslim soldiers, right? And more importantly, the Maratha, military was based more on infantry rather than cavalry. And what was the reason for that? Because it's very easy for the humans to climb the mountain rather than the soldiers on the animals. So infantry became very important than the cavalry, right? There was this specific breed of horse that was, a very significant part of Maratha, horse army, and that was Bhimtari breed. This Bhimtari breed was developed in Pune district, and in and around 17th and 18th century by crossbreeding the Arabian and Turkic breeds with local ponies. This breed became very important in Maratha, army and military, because it was able to cross the hilly terrains of the Maratha, or the ecological or the geographical landscape, right? Now let's understand how the Maratha infantry and cavalry officers were divided. What was the hierarchy or the rank of officers known as, right? So as part of Maratha infantry, the chief of Maratha army was Sarnobat. He was the highest official or the army chief, also known as Senapati. Under him, there were Hazaris. Each Hazari had Jumledar, right? Team of Jumledars. Each Jumledar had a team of Havaldar. Each Havaldar had a team of Nayaks. Nayaks were the smallest unit in the infantry. Now, what about cavalry? Now, in cavalry also, the Sarnobat was the chief, the highest official. Under him, there were Panch Hazaris. Under each Hazari, there was Jumla. Then under each Jumla, there were Havaldars. And next were Bargirs. This term of Bargirs is very, very important because Maratha cavalry had two kinds of soldiers. One was Bargir. Bargir were those soldiers who were state maintained and sponsored. So the state or the king provided them the equipment, horses, etc. And then there were other type of cavalry soldiers known as Silhadars or Siledars, who maintained their own forces, and they had their own arms, ammunition, horses, right? But they were under a tight supervision of the Maratha military administration. So these were these two type of cavalry soldiers which are very, very important. One is Bargir and the other one is Siledar. Now this term Bargir also comes from a Persian word called Bargir, which is also known as burden taker, right? Now, what about Maratha Navy? Very important, aspect of Maratha military again, right? So, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, as we had already seen, as part of his Hindavi Swaraj concept, did not only believe in territorial conquest, but also he played, or gave special emphasis on protecting the sovereignty of the people. And that sovereignty control could not have happened without also protecting the natural barrier of the coast or the sea. So that's why protecting or having a strong navy during those times, specifically under Marathas, became very, very important, right? So the strong navy by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was developed and maintained with the help of Kolis, who were the seafaring tribes in this region. The navy was equipped with two kinds of boats or ships. One was known as Gurab and the other one is known as Galivant. Gurabs were the gunboats and they looked like this, the big ones, right? So they were having guns, artillery, ammunition. And then there were Galivat, which were rowing boats, which was rowed by people, men, right? So these were the two kinds of ships or fleet the Maratha Navy had, right? So very, very important. Apart from this, Maratha Navy had around 200 vessels and was divided into two squadrons, two fleets, right? Whenever we are talking about Maratha Navy, role of Kanoji Angre has to be prepared and well acknowledged. Kanoji Angre is also known as Shivaji of the Sea, right? He played a very important role in providing a very strong naval defense against the Europeans as well as local rulers, right? So he was very significant naval commander during 17th and 18th century. He defended, as I told you, the coast not only from the European dangers but also from the locals, the Mughals, as well as the Siddhis. He used smaller ships, and in navy also there was this guerrilla tactic he invented. And as I have already mentioned, the guerrilla tactics used by Marathas were known as Ganimi Kava, right? Angre also, promoted this concept that if we are not having strong navy, we will not be able to build very strong trade, prospects or advantages in the Maratha or for Marathas. And for that, again, navy has to be very defensive and strong, right? Now let's understand how were the forts administered, because forts also played a very critical role in the Maratha military structures. The forts again had Sarnobad, which was the highest official, right? Under him were Sabnis. Sabnis had Havaldars, and then there were other officers also like Kiladars, right? Now let's understand the main function of the main officers in the fort. So, one significant contribution of Shivaji Maharaj was that he understood the importance of fort. And in Maratha military structures, there were more than 250 forts that were built, right? And none of the fort was under one officer. So the kind of checks and balance that needed to be there for providing a very strong defense was what was very well thought of under or during the times of Shivaji Maharaj itself. So as we have understood that each fort had, Havaldar, Sabnis, and a Sarnobat, right? So Sarnobat was the highest official, and he was having the control of the garrison under him. Havaldar was responsible for the safety and security of the fort and was the custodian of the keys of the fort. So जो भी keys थी वो हवलदार के पास थी, right? What about Sabnis? So Sabnis was a official who had the all the correspondence record. Muster rolls को prepare करता था. What are muster rolls? Muster roll is a entry or a record having the names of the soldiers, the ammunitions required, the supplies required, right? So records of revenue, accounts, list of names, they were all under or maintained by Sabnis, right? There were Kiladars also who were responsible for the fort's administration and security, right? As we have done that, not even a single fort was under any one officer, right? So there was this checks and balances imposed. And to keep a check on the officers of the fort, it was mandatory, it was compulsory to have seals of Havaldar and Karkhani on every order of the Sabnis, right? So this is how safety and security of the fort and checks and balances was ensured. Another aspect is how and on what basis the officers of the forts were recruited. So, to check the domination of any one caste in Maratha Empire, it was stipulated that specifically the Havaldars were having the keys of the fort, remember? And Sarnobat, who's the chief of the fort, under him all the garrison units are stationed, should be Marathas, right? So they were specifically chosen from the Marathas, right? Sabnis could be a Brahmin, and a Karkhani who looked after the warehouse or the workshop could be a Prabhu or a Kayast. So that is how, on religious lines or regional lines, the officers were recruited, right? After we have understood how Maratha military administration was carried down, without we understanding the kind of weapons the Marathas had with them, which became a very important tool for providing them the very strong defense, is again a very important information, right? So let's understand what kind of artillery, arms, and ammunitions the Marathas had with them. There were also innovations done in making weapons which suited the Maratha military or artillery tactics. So let's understand how the Maratha artillery was. So Maratha artillery or the Maratha men were armed with different kinds of weapons like swords, spears, bows and arrow, muzzle guns, musket guns, right? Rockets, cannons. This is the cannon kinds of different kinds of swords, different kinds of muskets or guns that were part of Maratha artillery, right? These are different kinds of swords like khand, khanjar, katar, shamsher, talwar, firangi. So different kinds of weapons, swords were used. Not only that, the kind of innovation and indigenous, indigenously they use certain kind of material found, right, to make the clothing of Maratha soldiers is again a very, very important aspect. So the kind of cap some Maratha soldiers wore were made up of the wool of sheep and goat. Now, what was the advantage of making such attire was that it was so lightweight that it was very difficult for it to get, cut by any sword or dagger, right? So it was very difficult to cut it, right? So that added that additional protection to the Maratha soldiers. So this was a kind of a special armor called as gugi, right? A very, innovative style of making armors or dresses for the Maratha soldiers. Not only this, there was this metal helmet also that was worn by musketeers, right, or the mercenaries. So this is what Maratha helmets also looked like, right? Then there was also brass cannons used in the Maratha military, right? I was talking about a special, weapon that was used by Shivaji Maharaj to kill Afzal Khan, and that was known as Vagnak. So Vagnak is coming from the word bag, tiger. So it was having a shape of tiger claws that was used by Shivaji Maharaj to kill Afzal Khan, right? So again, very, very important. The kind of guns that were used is also very interesting to note that it was not only used by soldiers, there were specific kind of muzzle guns that was used by women and children who were also, sometimes assisting the Maratha soldiers in very fearful battles, right? Again, a very important fact that we should know that when it comes to providing weapons and providing defense, the Maratha army deployed not only regular soldiers but also mercenaries and musketeers like these, specifically Karnataki musketeers who were renowned for mask, or having attire like this, were very important or special contingents in the Maratha army and military, right? So Maratha rulers understood that it is very important to have a strong Maratha army. And without the help of the Europeans, this was not possible. So at various points of time, the rulers and also Shivaji Maharaj took the help of the Europeans to have a strong Maratha army. So for example, the Marathas were using French made cannons, right? And Shivaji Maharaj also allowed the French to set up a factory or a warehouse at Rajapur, which was a very important station for import and export of weapons or guns to Marathas, right? Another aspect is that Shivaji Maharaj not only relied on one European power, at various points of time, whatever the speciality the Europeans were carrying with them when they came from the to the coast, he used it very strategically. So Shivaji Maharaj also took the help of British by entering into secret negotiations to have very modern guns like siege mortar, light artillery guns, grenadiers. But Britishers were very cautious at that point of time to not angry or disturb the relations they were having with the Mughal emperor. So what they did was that they sold those guns to Portuguese, and Portuguese in turn sold them to Marathas. So that is how the British made guns were also made part of Maratha military, right? Now, With this, we have understood the different aspects of Maratha military landscape, which we had, understood that how this topic needs to be done, right? There is another development that is going to come on 30th October, right? And that is your National Unity Day, Rashtriya Ekta Divas. And this year, Rashtriya Ekta Divas is having a theme of Raigad Fort, which is again linked with Maratha military, right? So this is also how you integrate different aspects of current affairs with the topic which has already emerged, before October, right? So as and when you are reading newspaper, the more dimensions you get to know, just integrate it with the topic. Now that means National Unity Day or Rashtriya Ekta Divas is also very important. So as I told you that it will be coming in the month of October itself. It is celebrated on 31st October, not 30th October, 31st October, and was introduced by the Government of India, and since 2014 it is getting celebrated to mark the birth anniversary of Vallabhbhai Patel, who played a very significant role in many fields and specifically political integration. And this year's National Unity Day theme is Raigad Fort. Raigad Fort is a very important fort from where Hindavi Swaraj was formally proclaimed by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Hindavi Swaraj is a message that gives us that there should be self-rule by the Indians, which was also later on used by different personalities in the Indian freedom struggle as well, right? So with this, we have ended the understanding of the topic of a current affairs, that in how and which all dimensions we could prepare any current affairs topic from static and current affairs perspective. So I hope the discussion and such series will be insightful and will let you know how to integrate current affairs with static dimensions, specifically in history. So all the best, guys. Have a nice day.